Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Diamond Hands podcast. Today I am so excited to introduce you to a dear friend of mine, Vinny Sathe. He is an up and coming voice in medical aesthetics, and if you don't know him, now's the time. He holds degrees not only in nursing, but also in fashion design. So, honey, he has an eye about him. And he also practices at Skin Spirit's first Colorado location in Denver. And he's also a KOL with Allergan. So, what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to talk about, his background, of course, his eye, how fashion, over intersects with aesthetics and all the things. So, welcome, my friend. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and it's a privilege to be speaking with you, an industry beast as well. So I'm so excited.
I'm still a baby. But, take us back to the beginning because that's where I always like to start. And tell me about a little bit about, where you grew up, what that environment kind of, how that shaped you. And when did you first become aware that you saw things differently and that your eye was like creative?
Absolutely. That's a great question. We are all a product of like the very first days of life, right? I am a
Yeah.
small town boy. I grew up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, if you've heard of it. Yes, my father's career in sterile packaging took us all around the Midwest. I was really raised in Kalamazoo, and being born in a small town just really kind of grounded myself in a sense of community, the doors unlocked, always open kind of mentality of a neighborhood. So I really cherish that time of my life. We're not going back that small ever again. But it was a great place to grow roots. And honestly, it wasn't my eye that was first noticed. And it's actually my father who really recognized my natural intuitions around things that are beautiful. And specifically, it was music. I was not even 3 years old when my father discovered that I would tap along to a beat and very rhythmically accurate. And so once he noticed this, he fostered music into my life. And that's actually when I began piano and then viola at the age of 4. So music, yes, fellow
Yeah.
violinist. Music was kind of where the discovery happened. I had an ear. And from there, I have fond memories of where my eye came into play. And as a young kid, my parents, being Indian immigrants to the US in the late 70s and early 80s, really fostered my creativity. Don't get me wrong, this was very much an Asian household. Math and science was at the forefront. We were expected to excel in school always in these areas, but they allowed me to explore both music and my creative arts. And one of my fondest memories, honestly, is sitting in the middle of my parents' bathroom on the day of an Indian wedding or holiday, and all of my family members would come to me where I was seated stationary. My
Mhm.
aunties with a sari and a pair of earrings, and they would try to color match all of their outfits. And even my uncles and my dad tied a suit. This started when I was so young, and I
Mhm.
distinctly remember this because I think this is where I started to realize that I'm good at this. I'm
Mhm.
creative, and
Mhm.
I love this about myself.
Yeah, and I love that so much, and it's so funny. I was actually having a conversation with my siblings earlier. We were like fighting over text. It was really fun. My brother and my brother was saying something about like, oh, he was like Leslie. He was like, you've done so many different things in your life, and it's like creative people tend to do that. You just tend to do so many different things. Violin, piano. Sorry for you, viola, piano, then fashion design, all the things. But it's like a specific way of seeing the world. It's like I can do a lot of different things and they're all related.
100. And like, are we all slightly neurodivergent? Probably, but I'm cool with it.
Just a little bit. Just a little
That's
bit.
fine. I mean, creativity takes a complex brain, right? Like, you need to set it free.
And I think that's true. So like, going deeper into like creativity and it's like tell me like what do you think is your way of seeing the world? Like how do you like piece together different things to say, okay, I'm living in this world. This is, the role that I play in it. This is how it makes music with all the other parts. Like how do you look at your life in that way?
Really, it's kind of twofold for me. We have the emotional and then we have the physical. And how do we marry those in harmony, right? So, and aesthetics lends itself to both of those things. It's all about perception. And so when I approach anything, I'm looking at it as an experience. And I love that word. That word first came to me early in my career when experiential marketing was kind of at the forefront. How do we take something off of print and into a lived experience? And that, I think, is how I approach aesthetics fundamentally, is not both from just the physical beauty of something, but what is the emotion that draws?
Yeah, and what's the second part? So you said beauty. Sorry, no, you told me. You said emotion and then
Physical.
physical, and then also with your body. Like you work out a lot, like body tea.
I I do. And physical fitness is no stranger to aesthetics either. Like, look, I often, and I'm just saying this because it's factually true, get approached by people in the gym and they assume or presume that I must be a dancer because of my movements in the gym. And there's
Mhm.
beauty to that. I find the most beautiful chiseled physiques on the likes of dancers and gymnasts. And it's because their motions are intentional, they're dialed in, and they're aesthetically beautiful.
I know, and I love that, and I think it's like as you're because working as a practitioner, like you're on your feet, many times hours a day, crouched over people, in odd positions or have you. Like
Right.
everyone's yeah, right. Like everyone like see like they go so glamorous. Like yeah, there's a part of it that is glamorous, but it's like at the end of the day, it's like you're looking at someone, you're so honed in on someone's lips or someone's forehead or something, and it's just like you do need to be, in my opinion, someone fit to keep that stamina over years.
Absolutely. I mean, and that to tie it back into aesthetics and anti-aging again, it's, we can present how we look in a certain way, but what is the body that's carrying this face through the world? It needs to do it also with a finesse and a beauty, and that takes physical fitness as well as mental fitness.
Yeah, it's a huge one. And so you went from fashion, obviously, then you went to the needle. And that's a big switch. And it's like, because your first degree was in fashion design from University of Cincinnati. And I think that's so like interesting. And then you went to work one of the biggest names, Condé Nast, in New York City. And so, but you walked away from that world. What was it that made you say, all right, let me pivot? What was it that made you want to pivot at that time?
The world of fashion to me started to dilute. The passion became diluted for me when it became work. And I started to lose interest in that form of the arts when it became so rooted in consumer market research and what is sellable. The beauty of it all and the fun and the artistry started to get lost for me. Another piece of that was my upbringing, again, was rooted heavily in math and science. And that was just very much a part of Asian culture. And I was missing my philosophical brain, my medical brain, my science brain. So where I was really diving full in creativity and the arts, I left behind the analytical, the science, the math, and I missed it. And I didn't know at that time as a middle-aged 20-year-old had I made the right choice as a career. Who actually knows at 18 what they're setting off to do in this world, right? And
Mhm.
so I went all in on design. And I'm so glad that I did that. But what made me leave publishing, marketing in the fashion world was to get back into creativity, but in front of people. I was missing people. I think a lot of when we think about fashion, we think about runway shows and photo shoots. A lot of it is spent behind a desk at a computer in a tower in New York City. And
Mhm.
I was just not happy in that space. And so I was really looking for something where I could be with people,
Mhm.
impacting people on a day to day, and still bring in my scientific brain.
Yeah, and I think that's so interesting and something that I want to hone in on a little bit. I know you had said that when you were there, they were all always looking at like, okay, data, how do we sell the next thing? And we know that aesthetics can have a component of that too, especially, if it's a business. It's a business, right? And so how do you feel any of that coming into the medical aesthetic space in general? And if so, how do you prevent that and continue to focus on the experience for the patient over just like, okay, data, this is what sells. So we're going to sell it. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And kind of like trying to game the system, so to speak.
I don't think it's being ignored, and I don't think it's being left behind or anything like that. I am constantly analyzing what it is that is successful within my practice, what it is that drives business, and what it is that keeps patients in my chair and returning to my chair.
Mm-hmm.
But what becomes very fortunate is when you find work that you inherently love, when
Mm-hmm.
it no longer feels like work. One thing I always say is I never say I have to go to work. I
Mm-hmm.
get to go to work. And
Yeah.
I'm very blessed to feel that way. So then the business side, the numbers, the analytics becomes secondary and natural. It's not forced. I'm not doing something that I don't wish to do. It is a part of my business, but it's like I said, it just becomes a natural piece of it rather than an extension that I have to do, a piece of work or a task.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so, like, when you came into the field of nursing, did people know your background? Did they look at you sideways? Like, you were doing fashion, like, you already have a degree in fashion design, and now you're back for nursing. Like, tell me about those conversations.
It was very, very strange to go into nursing school because uniquely, my design school awarded us with a Bachelor of Science in Fashion Design. So I did not achieve a BA.
Mm,
And later, would I come to realize that that was a huge blessing because it allowed me to apply for accelerated nursing programs. With a BA, that would not have been possible. And so when I entered into an accelerated nursing program, I was among what you would expect microbiology grads, bio grads, chem grads who had a root in science with their first degree, but were looking to specialize. And
mhm,
here I was, the only person in my class with something not related to the sciences, and it was in design. So I got asked about it right out the get-go. And it was something that I never hid or was ashamed of. It was something
mhm,
that I brought to my nursing program as something unique to me and a benefit to me. If you look at any of my notebooks or my notes from my nursing program, it's a lot
mhm.
of sketches. I learn in a visual way, and I brought that to my clinical education.
And I love that. And so it's like, so I know that you approach, like, the faces art and everything. And I know you've described, your design philosophy is based on like three core pillars, right? You say form and space, interaction with light, and materials. So can you walk us through what each of those actually means when you're standing in front of your patient and you're like, okay, you're assessing. Tell us more about that philosophy.
Definitely. The philosophy actually comes from the Bauhaus, which was a famous school in Germany, and that was what my design school was modeled after.
Mhm.
And what the core belief was, and at the time, was that the ability to create or design was something that was not an inherent gift. In previous times, it was believed that artists were given a divine gift, a gift from God, and they were set on this earth to paint such illustrations. And so the Bauhaus was moving away from that. And what they believed was that aesthetics could be taught, and I firmly believe that. And
Mhm.
so when I entered my design program, it didn't matter if you were an architecture degree, fashion design, graphic design, we all started year one together in what we called foundations. And this is where this comes from, and what I call the three dimensions of aesthetics, or three pillars of aesthetics. And that is the intersection or the interaction with light, what it is, how does it exist within a space, which would be form, and then material. And so I would love to go through each one of those. So when we think about something that is visually aesthetically pleasing, so now we're thinking of something that has a physical presence. So we're going to ignore smell, we're going to ignore sound because it doesn't apply here. And the first one is light. And light is the sole thing that we need to be able to perceive something in a visual way. Nothing exists in the absence of light as we describe it in a visual sense, right? So,
Mhm.
and that has two intersections, highlight and shadow. And this is something we talk about all the time when we're assessing the face. Where is the points of highlight? Where are shadows being created? And we often think of shadows as the aging process.
Mhm.
And so when I examine something from a fashion sense, how is a garment behaving with light? I'm bringing that to my aesthetic consultation in the clinical setting as well. And the
Mhm.
second part of my first dimension, which is light, is the visible spectrum of light. Roy G. Biv. How do we perceive things in color? And so this brings itself into aesthetic space as we think of different Fitzpatrick types and skin tones, disease processes such as inflammatory disease processes, acne vulgaris, or what might you, or hyperpigmentation. The second one, the second pillar or dimension when I think about visual aesthetics is form. And we have two subcategories again. Is it two dimensional, flat graphic design, text on a screen, or is it three-dimensional? A garment, a handrail, a car, a vase, or a human. So we exist in a space in one of two ways, either flat or morphic. We have form. Obviously, in the clinical setting with medical aesthetics, we are talking about the changes in morphology as we age, right?
Mhm.
And what are the presentations or things that we think about as a youthful face, and how can we restore that? And then the last one is material. And this is truly what it sounds like. What is something made of? In
Mhm.
the design world and in the fashion world, we can think of, is it made of wool gabardine? Is it silk chiffon? Is there boning or structural elements? What are the haberdasheries and the buttons? In aesthetics, we're thinking about two things. What is the person made of? And I know that sounds silly, but it's true. What is their Fitzpatrick type? What is their skin type? Are they oily, dry? Do they have underlying disease processes that might affect their skin? Are they peri or postmenopausal? What are they made of? And then the other one is what we're about to deliver made of? Is it
Mhm.
an energy? Is it a gel? Is it a neurotoxin? And so we have to think about what the product is made of. Specifically, when we think about hyaluronic acid gels, we think about all those properties,
Mhm.
viscosity, G prime, all of the properties that make it function and perform within the skin.
I love that. That's a great philosophy. So you guys got that balance. Basically, what was it? It was no, I got it. It was form and space, interaction with light and materials, as broken down by Vinny.
But the three things that you need to make something aesthetic. That's it.
Exactly. I love that. And then, with that, I know that beautiful results are obviously is the goal. It's most important, obviously. But how do you kind of hold the line between enhancing someone, and imposing your own aesthetic on them? Like, how do those things kind of align? Is it more like, because everyone has their own philosophy. Some people allow people to come in and say, okay, oh, you want this? Even if it's the worst thing for them, they're gonna do it and take the money and
Mama,
run.
no.
So yeah, tell us more about your philosophy with that. Like,
This is a collaboration. It
yeah.
is not a one-way dialogue. Your
Mhm.
patient is your canvas, and just as much as I might speak to a garment or in my head speak to a garment and form it and shape it, I am speaking to my patient. I
Yeah.
want to know what makes them tick. What do they find most beautiful about themselves? And what are their goals out of an anti-aging treatment? And
Mhm.
I love this question because a lot of what I focus on, what a lot of what I talk about, whether it's on podium or in the clinical setting, is the unique qualities to ethnocentric curiosities. And I always say
Mhm.
ethnocentric curiosities because they are just that. They're things that we think about and ponder.
Mhm.
And so I bring that into every consultation. What is ethnically unique to you? What is it about your face that rings mom or dad? We don't want to alienate those features ever,
Mhm.
right? And we want to enhance them. And so the provider that is listening and dictating what the patient wants is setting themselves up for failure because oftentimes the patient is being influenced by something else and
Mhm.
might just need redirection into what makes them uniquely beautiful.
Yes, and it's a thing. It's been talked about on the internet, different platforms. It's like when everyone starts to look the same, everyone's getting the same nose job, everyone's getting the same lips, everyone's getting the same eyebrows. Guys, I'm talking about my eyebrows today, whatever. But it's just like everybody's getting the same things done, and it's like there is a beauty, like you said, in the uniqueness of everyone's face. And we need to stop trying to look like someone that we're not, essentially.
100%. And that creates this homogeny with which thankfully the industry now is sprinting away from. I think we've all come into alignment that replication of a strategy, of a treatment plan, or of a technique was yielding these homogenous outcomes. And then we
Mhm.
started to give them names: pillow face,
Mm.
Mar-a-Lago face. Yes, I said it. Whatever it might be, but it was homogeny and it was being taught. And
Yeah.
that was partially on us as an aesthetic industry. And we are actively doing better to up the standards of training, to repeat training, to inspire injectors to never stop educating and
Mhm.
challenging ideas that come up in clinical settings or on podium. Not everybody on podium might deliver something that we all find to be fundamentally true or right. And it's up to us as a science, as a profession of medicine,
Mhm.
to challenge that and have dialogue around it so that we can continue to grow.
Yeah, and I think that's really good. I was talking to Audrey Neff from Aviva last week on the podcast, and we were actually talking about some of that, where it's just like, you do have to make sure that when you're speaking about people, it's like your public platform, like on Instagram, is not the place to do it because your patients are seeing that. And they're like, what's going on? We don't understand. Why do you hate this person? Why are you like, or talking about a product badly in public. And I've seen quite a bit of that recently where people will bash a product that they are a KOL for in public. I seen a couple things in the past few weeks, baby. I say, I just mind my business these days. But
And honestly, and I posted a story about this and it generated quite some traction, is at the end of the day, being inflammatory on social media is not good for the experience of your brand, right? We
mm,
have to carry our brand forward in every aspect, every facet that some people might engage with it. And if you present inflammatory information, it doesn't serve anybody. I've never found something good to come of being nasty.
no, nothing. It's just it's a negative energy, and if you're having positive experiences, it's just something that chips away from your perception of that person when you're seeing them bash someone. And so it's like those things are great to do in, like we were talking about, like private forums, or like at a conference with your colleagues, and you're talking to them about, oh, I saw this paper, or I read this paper, or whatever. That's the place to bash and dash, not where your patients.
Exactly. And we all know this, but some people just can't help themselves. And it comes from this desire for clickbait that we need to have more interaction on our socials. And I can leave it. I don't need all that. I don't.
Amen. Take the higher road, baby. So it's like,
Right.
speaking of that, you're growing, you're nationally net recognized, you helped open Skin Spirits of, first Colorado location. What does it mean to build a practice's reputation in a community from the ground up? And how do you think about your personal brand inside a larger institutional brand? And yeah.
Well, I have to start by giving all the kudos and props to what Skin Spirit is doing in the industry. At the helm in Palo Alto, our CEO, Lynn Hubline, and our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Dean Visnes, they had a vision for something more elevated than the average med spa. And they've stuck to their core values that promote an experience. And this aligns very closely with my own beliefs that the med spa experience, the medical aesthetic experience, starts with the first interaction when you walk through a door, and it carries through to the environment, the smell of the environment. We're constantly making sure that our physical space matches the luxury level and standard of care that we deliver. So I am blessed to be with a company that already had that in place. So that made it very easy for me to assist with my own brand as Nurse Vinny, to marry and harmonize our two brands to really create something special in Denver. And it's been a really amazing experience to grow as a leader because I've been at this clinic since its founding. So as we've hired on new staff and new nurses, it's allowed me to grow from an injector to somebody that is looked up to, or as a mentor. And I absolutely love my team. I love providing the administrative staff with information or knowledge or education when they seem a little bit stuck on how to deliver something over the phone. Bringing and onboarding new nurses allows me to learn from them as well as teach them if they're open to it. So it's been a really great experience and a growing experience for me to be looked at in that way. And that's really kind of this era of my profession and what Skin Spirit has brought to me in that way.
And I love that. And so with that, it's like, for you, what does like visible authority look like to you? And how do you want people to recognize or understand your expertise before they ever even meet you? Like, what's important for a provider, say a new person who's listening to this podcast, to start putting out into the world so people understand them for a certain viewpoint?
Yeah, and I think the key point here to understand is before they even meet you. And this goes back to the aesthetics of our personal brand and the perception. And I'm going to keep going back to that. Aesthetics describes how we perceive something. And so we need to start curating our perception of ourselves in every aspect that we might interact with somebody. And that's going to be on social media. That's going to be in our day-to-day interactions out in the real world. And authority, to me, requires a couple things. It requires the receipts, honey.
Yeah.
You can't have authority without having gone through the process. And for that process to look like one thing is, I think, misleading, because we can be an RN or we can be a doctor. We could be a nurse practitioner or a PA, but we have to have the receipts first. And whether we tout that in a physical or verbal way by displaying our degrees on the wall or talking about our credentials, that's step one to gaining authority. Step two is to have a likability about you. You can be authoritative, but that word is negative, right? Authoritative doesn't typically come with a smile. Having authority can be rather neutral, and that comes with likability. We have to be pleasant. We have to be grounded and humble in how we present and talk to the world, and as well as how we treat ourselves, quite frankly. And then the last thing I think with authority is clearly trust. And trust comes with that part where we actually do meet the person. It's hard to build trust on social media. It's hard to build trust in a digital space or without actually getting to know somebody. So that's when we bring it into the physical and come sit down with me and let me show you and tell you and prove to you why I have authority in this space.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing because parasocial relationships are a thing where someone is like obsessed with someone. Like I have some besties that I've never even met. Actually, they're on social media. I'm like, yes, queen, and I'm always on their page, like just being annoying, right? And so we have those parasocial relationships, and so like when you build a certain level of perception, and this is why sometimes there's a halo effect that's created, and then and this happens sometimes in practices. It's like there's a halo effect. You think you're going to get a certain experience. And then when you go there, you're disappointed because you're like, oh, what you're presenting is not what's actually in reality. Like, woo. And I think even with, because anyone could fake whatever they want on social media, right? Especially now with all this, everyone can design with AI, or everyone can do all this stuff now, even though it looks terrible. But
and I think we're gonna really see. I mean, the conversation on AI, and I'm glad you bring this up, is so interesting because I think we're entering this era where we're all kind of closet secret AI user freaks, but then out in the real world, we're starting to like have this feeling that we need to be kind of against it because of its impact on the environment, what it's going to do to jobs. So this juxtaposition of hating AI but secretly using it at the same time has been a really interesting crossroads for me. Look, I'm not going to lie. I use AI. Your prompt sheet for today, I had a discussion with my Gemini about some of the key points I would like to discuss today. At the same time, we have to acknowledge the bad that comes with it. So it's going to be just like anything else. When it's used and harnessed for good, it's going to be a powerful tool. When it's used to cheat and deceive, that is going to come to light eventually. And that's up to that person to deal with the ramifications of leaning so heavily into creating a fictitious perception of their brand. And then when rubber hits the road and when the patient's butt is in the chair, they're going to have to answer to that. So I don't know it does a provider or a clinician any good to overly use AI to fool somebody.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just interesting. Like you said, I love what you said there. It's like there is, when you're using it the right way, there's a lot of room for good in it. But there are going to be quite a few people, governments included, that are going to use it for terrible things. And it's like, we'll see. I was listening to a podcast recently. I'm like, wow. And they're talking about AI, like all the doomsday stuff. It was a guy who like formerly worked at like some big, huge like firm for AI. And I'm like, the next 5 years are going to be interesting.
100. But we have to take it as it comes. And that's how I'm just approaching AI. It's here, it's not going anywhere. And honestly, I always believe that I'm going to presume I have one earthly chance on this beautiful space we call Earth. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. So I'm going to maximize it. And if the industry is going to leverage AI, I don't want to fall behind. And that's just the facts.
Yeah, I mean, I use it all the time, so I'm not a hater of it. So I'm one of those people. You weave, like you said, weave and bob. You adapt because you have to, or you're going to fall behind. But I also think, like you're an artist at heart, craftsmanship is important. Understanding what you're doing, why you're doing it, and being genuinely good at it. So if all the AI tools are left tomorrow, I still know how to write a mean paper, right? Like, honey.
Honey. And that comes back to what I said about authority and having the receipts.
Yes.
We have the receipts, so we good. We have that cushion behind us to fall back on should,
Yes.
we got to change course.
Exactly. I'm like, I know how to write already. So yeah, no, I love this. So so I know that you said great results come with trust, curiosity, and I love what you said about shared vision for one's best self. And so what does building trust actually look like, especially with a patient who has been disappointed elsewhere? So I'm coming into your practice. I've been disappointed by Dr. R or Nurse P or whoever, and I'm coming to you. How do you help me trust you to then work with me?
I want to first know what upset you about the previous experience. I think by not asking that question,
Mhm.
we start shooting in the dark again and we set ourselves up for disappointing this patient again. I
Yeah.
want to know what hurt you. What made you leave that office and feel disappointed? That's going to allow me to address your questions more accurately, right? I think people tiptoe around that. They don't want to discuss it because they don't want to bring the negativity in their auspice. But I don't look at it that way. I look at it as the beginnings to building that trust. Let me understand what went wrong the first time so I can make it better, right? The same way that a clinician in a hospital setting wants to know, why do you feel bad?
Yep.
What made you feel bad? Was it a person or was it something inside you, right? So that's
Mhm.
step one. Step two, we have to credential ourselves. We are taking back medical aesthetics. And I'm so glad to see this happening at conferences across the country, internationally.
Mhm.
And one of the podium conference lectures I'm going to be giving this fall is around language and aesthetics and the
Mhm.
words that we are using.
Mhm.
And we need to move away from overly beauty standardized words that are marketing material type words, right? And we need to start talking about how do the treatments we administer perform over time?
Mhm.
Performance. How can we optimize your natural beauty? The language is important here. And so
Mhm.
we're taking back the language. We're also taking it back the clinical environment. So we need to credential ourselves. We need to discuss medical aesthetics in a medical way. We need to operate in environments that build trust, right?
Mhm.
The environment should almost describe the level of care the person is about to receive without me having even entered the room. So the
Mhm.
confidence starts also with the actual physical space. And then outside of all of that, we need to dump those receipts and we need to do it in a way that is inherent and true and genuine to our brand. I
Mhm.
openly talk about my design degree in the very openings of my consultation so that it can be a natural part of my conversation. Because
Mhm.
now we're going to talk about why I believe my receipts
Mhm.
translated into treatment onto your body is going
Mhm.
to deliver the expected outcome you are here to receive.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Every founder has their own origin story, their own way of seeing the world that affects how they actually operate. And to anyone listening, like if you're, it's one of those things where you have to understand truly who you are in order to have a practice thesis. Why do I practice this way? Why do I see this the way that I see it? And some people come from different places. Like Sebastian Codafana is going to be completely academic, and it's going to be like, I've dissected 3,000 heads, or I don't know, you know what I mean? And whereas someone else, like you get a fashion degree, and you're like, okay, I see your face as materials, as light, as structure, and I also have my medical license. This is how I do this for you. It's beautiful.
And there's nothing to be ashamed or shy of when we credential ourselves too. I think
Mhm.
early nurses entering the medical aesthetics field or MDs and NPs and PAs shy away from credentialing themselves. And I don't understand why. You put in the time, you put in the work to earn the degree and to award yourself the trust in your patients to do what
Mhm.
you do. Talk about it. Talk
Yeah.
about it. We don't need to be braggadocious, but
Mhm.
it is a part of the trust building process and it's important.
100%. And even your team members, it's like they have to be taught how to credential a practitioner before they actually come into the practice too. And I think that's very important. So, you know, it's coming from all different angles.
100.
I love that. And so, you know, what do you think the next generation of nurses, aesthetic nurses, need to understand about building a career, you know, with both clinical depth and cultural authority? And what role do you want to play in shaping it?
Ooh, loaded question. For the next generation of nurses, I think one thing that we need to consider and promote and teach and foster is directly what I said, is that reclaiming of the aesthetic medicine field into medical practice, to discuss our treatments as such, to be prescriptive in our delivery. And so I think that's point number one for me, is to any of the new nurses, doctors, MDs, DOs, NPs, PAs listening out there. You're about to enter a space that for the past decade got a little bit too lax, in my opinion, a little too casual, a little too salon spa. And we're going to bring it back to medicine because it truly is. And extending and going beyond that, there's a discussion right now about the intersection of non-invasive medical aesthetics and surgery.
Mhm.
And a lot of drama, let's call it drama, around the use of injectables ahead of, let's say, plastic surgical procedure. So I think the future of medical aesthetics is how we become a part of a bigger care plan. The handoff we should be expected to give to a surgeon. This all goes back to reclaiming medical aesthetics into a medical practice. We should be having more conversations on the phone with a surgeon about to touch the face of a patient that we have previously treated. That's a handoff that is happening in the hospital setting. It's a handoff that needs to happen in aesthetics. So this future looks like, where do we sit on a patient's care plan in aesthetics as it exists from non-invasive to invasive? And this can come in the form of prepping the patient, right? We need to become bigger in our role. I think it should be expected of us anyways, but we need to be a part of the preoperative prep. And instead of saying injectables before the scalpel is going to make surgery harder, we need to accept the reality that the patient coming into your surgical consult is not the patient of 20 years ago. They are not necessarily a virgin face, and they did explore non-invasive treatments ahead of your surgical procedure. So where can we fall in that line? We need to start documenting historical treatments better. When a patient leaves an aesthetic practice and moves to a new one, whether for moving to a new city or just finding a new practitioner, they need to bring that report with them so we can continue their care along their journey, so that when they are ready for surgical intervention, we can deliver the handoff that is already expected in the acute care or outpatient care setting.
And on that, we're just going to wrap it up right there. That was amazing because, you know, you don't see that care. Wow.
We
No, I
don't.
love that. Bring medicine back to medical aesthetics. Mic
100, period.
mic drop, y'all. So, Vinny, I appreciate your time, your preparation. I just adore you so much, and I can't wait to
Likewise.
see you soon. And guys, everything about Nurse Vinny is going to be in the show notes. And you know, he does do private trainings as well. So, especially for the Colorado area, he's someone that you want to reach out to or at least network with. Thanks so much, Vinny.
Thank you, Leslie. Good to see you, love.
You too.
Want more clarity like this? Join the Branded Practice newsletter community. I write about strategy, systems, and brand leadership straight to your inbox. Go to diamondhandsmedia.com to sign up. And if this episode hit, share it with someone still building without a brand. This is the Diamond Hands Podcast. Thanks for listening. Now go lead.